reported by Group 10. Group members: Aliyah Ferrer, Lea Sabater, Jason Austria. Our learning objectives: to know the meaning of acceleration in physics, to know the misconception about acceleration in physics and its truth, to know how to solve equations involving acceleration.
What is acceleration? Acceleration is a name we give to any process where velocity changes. Since the velocity is a speed in a direction, there are only two ways for you to accelerate. Change your speed or change your direction, or change both.
A jet is moving with a constant velocity, velocity of 800 miles per hour along a straight line. Is the jet accelerating? Kayo guys, ano sa tingin niyo? Nag-accelerate ba ang jet o hindi?
The jet is moving with a constant velocity of 800 miles per hour along a straight line. Therefore, the jet is not accelerating. So bakit nga ba ulit i-accelerate jet? Dahil the jet is moving with a constant velocity. Ibig sabihin, hindi daw po nagbabago yung speed ng jet. Tapos, hindi rin nagbabago yung direction jet.
When a jet lands and quickly comes to stop, acceleration will occur since the jet is slowing down during the process of landing the jet. Here are the illustrations to help you understand acceleration furthermore.
What is the formula for acceleration? Said, acceleration is defined as to be the rate of change of the velocity. It is the number of meters by second by which the velocity is changing. So how can we get the number of meters by second by which the velocity is changing? How can we get the rate of change of the velocity of an object? We can get the acceleration of an object by using this formula. So paano po ito basahin? How can we read this? The equation says that the acceleration A is equal to the difference between the final velocity and initial velocity, df minus vi, divided by the time t it took for the velocity to change from initial velocity to final velocity.
The units for acceleration are meters per second, which can be also written as meter per second too. If you solve A, if you solve A equals Vf minus Vi per t or per time for final velocity, you get a rearranged version of this formula that is useful. This rearranged version of the formula lets you find the final velocity or Vf after a time or t of constant acceleration a. We'll talk about these formulas for further understanding later.
Misconception about accelerations in physics. Acceleration is the same velocity. Therefore, if the velocity of an object is huge, then the acceleration must be huge as well, same as the acceleration being small, but that just ain't so. The value of the given velocity at a given moment does not determine the acceleration. Yes, di ba nga gaya ng sinabi kanina, ang steady na mabilis na speed at direction ng jet doesn't show acceleration. Why? Kasi kahit pa nasa 800 miles per hour ang pagtakbo ng jet, which is a huge amount of velocity. Dahil wala itong change of speed and direction, then nangangahulugan na zero ang acceleration nito.
There is another misconception when it comes to acceleration. The second misconception has something to do with whether the acceleration is negative or positive. People think that if the acceleration is negative, then the object is slowing down, and if the acceleration is positive, then the object is speeding up, but this is wrong. An object with a negative acceleration could be speeding up. An object with a positive acceleration could be slowing down.
Consider the fact that acceleration is a vector that points in the same direction as the change in velocity. That means that the direction of acceleration determines whether you will be adding to or subtracting from the velocity.
Mathematically, a negative acceleration means you will subtract from the current value of the velocity. And a positive acceleration means you will add to the current value of the velocity. Subtracting the value of the velocity could increase the speed of an object if the velocity was already negative to begin with, because it would cause the magnitude to increase. To summarize, the acceleration points in the same direction as the velocity if the object is speeding up, and in the opposite direction if the object is slowing down. The acceleration has the same side as the velocity, object will be speeding up. If the acceleration has the opposite side as the velocity, the object will be slowing down.
Example number 1. A neurotic tiger shark starts from the rest and speeds up uniformly to 12 meters per second in a time of 3 seconds. What was the magnitude of average acceleration of the tiger shark?
To solve this equation, we need to start with the definition or the formula of acceleration, which is acceleration is equals to the final velocity minus the initial velocity over time. So, in the equation, what is our initial velocity? Our initial velocity is 0 meters per second because the neurotic tiger shark starts from rest, which means there is no motion, there is no speed, there is no direction. Zero, only zero motion, no action. And our final velocity is 12 meters per second in time per second. Kasi gumalaw yung shark natin from 0 to 12 meters per second. Then our time interval is 3 seconds. Plug in the final velocity, initial velocity, and time interval, and calculate it. Their answer will be 4 meters per second squared.
A bald eagle is flying to the left with a speed of 34 meters per second when a gust of wind blows back against the eagle, causing it to slow down with a constant acceleration of a magnitude 8 meters per second squared. But will the speed of bald eagle be after the wind has blown for 3 seconds?
To answer this equation, we need to start with the definition of acceleration, which is acceleration is equals to the final velocity minus the initial velocity over the time interval. So I know that you may think that our final velocity is 8 meters per second squared, but per second squared is the unit we used for acceleration, which means the magnitude of 8 meters per second squared is our acceleration. So the missing thing that we need to find here is our final velocity. So how will we find our final velocity? We can find our final velocity by using this formula. Final velocity is equals to the initial velocity plus acceleration times time and l. Plug in the initial velocity as negative since it points to left. So y again is 34 negative because the bird flew in the left side direction. And we are choosing a convention where we're treating rightward as the positive direction. And plug in the acceleration with an opposite sign as velocity since the eagle. Bakit positive yung 8? Kasi according dun sa equation, the bird slowed down. Di ba sinabi sa clarification sa second misconception na if an object is slowing down, it means that the sign of acceleration is in opposition to the sign of velocity. And then plug in the time interval and then calculate it. Final velocity is equal to negative 34 meters per second plus 8 meters per second squared times 3 seconds. It is equal to the final, it is equal to negative 10 meters per second. The question asks for speed. Since it is always a positive number, the answer must be positive. So just change the time of negative 10 to positive 10 meters per second. Dun, dun, dun.